Discussion on the agenda. Seeing none, all of those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the agenda carries. I would entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes for January 16th.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the minutes of January 16th? Seeing none, all of those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the motion carries. I would like to extend a welcome as we go into reports of officers to Superintendent Al Bangora, and the floor is yours. On behalf of the entire Park Board, welcome.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this speaker's on. Well, thank you for the,
No.
there we go.
No, it's on.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the welcome. I'm incredibly excited to be here and look forward to the year and all the possibilities and things that we're going to do within our recreation department. And I want to personally thank the board for your support, and I'm just very excited for the year. And there's a lot of things that we're going to try to work on. One of the things we talked about was organizational excellence. So we're going to focus on that, environmental stewardship, really engaging the community. And so I look forward to those things, and I look forward to meeting with staff and meeting with the community. And again, thank you for the warm welcome.
Thank you, Superintendent Bangora. Do folks have any questions or comments for the superintendent before we move on with the agenda? Commissioner Forney.
Yes, we had talked about the superintendent's request to set out goals and objectives, and I was wondering if we have anything slated for when we'll be addressing those, the needs.
I will address that question. Superintendent Bangora, the executive staff, and I have had conversations. We initially had a meeting tentatively scheduled for the 13th. At the request of the superintendent and executive staff, we are looking for an alternative date, probably closer to the end of February.
That would include the board, you're saying?
That would include the board,
Thank you.
another committee of the whole. Seeing no other questions or comments for the superintendent, I will just say it feels a little weird welcoming you today because the superintendent has been hard at work for the last several days for the Minneapolis Park Board. So it doesn't feel like a welcome today, but to everybody out there. Thank you, Superintendent. I would entertain a motion on the consent agenda for items 7.1 through item 7.7.
So moved.
The consent agenda has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
The consent agenda has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Commissioner Forney.
I have to look to see which one it is. It's about our legislative.
It's Resolution 2019-102. It's the legislative agenda.
Yes, I would like to pull that for discussion.
Commissioner Forney, Resolution 2019-102 is not part of the consent agenda.
Too eager, sorry.
Is there any discussion on Resolution 7.1 through 7.7? Seeing none, all of those in favor of 7.1 through 7.7, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the consent agenda carries. Chair Meyer.
I move Resolution 2019-102, and we did make some changes based on our feedback at the legislative breakfast. Do we need an amendment to make those changes? Okay, so there are 3 changes. This is in the packet. The first one strikes the Stone Arch Bridge item because the Stone Arch Bridge is fully funded. And then, based on feedback from legislators, there are 2 additions. The first is one at the recommendation of Representative Hornstein to add a provision about bicycle and pedestrian transportation, support transportation bill that encourages pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure and electric car charging stations. They are working on the transportation bill and would like support from all corners to get funding for that, and that is something that impacts the park board because we have a lot of bicycle and pedestrian routes. And then the second one was at the request of Representative Virginius to add a provision on surface and groundwater issues in South Minneapolis to monitor legislative actions and opportunities to address surface and groundwater issues in South Minneapolis.
The motion, the motion has been moved. Is there a motion to move the resolution with those amendments stated by Chair Meyer? Is there,
So moved.
the amendments have been moved by Commissioner Cogill
Second.
and seconded by Commissioner Forney. Is there any discussion on the legislative agenda with those amendments incorporated? Commissioner Forney.
Yes, this is a very, very impressive agenda. It's also a large agenda, per at least the ones that I've seen through the years. And being we're down one lobbyist, I would just like to give me some priority. I think would be helpful, you know, for what do we feel is the 5, what should we say, most urgent? I think would be helpful, not only for our lobbyists, but for, you know, our legislators and just for us all to kind of be, you know, on the same page of, you know, what is it that we would like to see really do full frontal, you know, attack on. So if I could ask for some sort of a show of hands of what people might think were their priorities would be appreciated. Is that something that people would be interested in looking at?
No.
I'm seeing some head nods.
Commissioner Forney, I'm not entirely sure if you have a motion on the floor, or if that is a
Discussion,
comment.
really.
I will move on, if that's the conclusion of your comments for now, I'll move on to Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you. I think it's entirely appropriate to give our lobbyist team some direction in prioritization, but I think that's something that we should discuss in the work plan. So I feel like for today, we should approve the agenda, and then, as we discussed previously, at a subsequent meeting, we can move forward with the work plan that not only prioritizes our items, but would also assign people to work on them and have some accountability about it.
Thank you, Chair Meyer. Is there any other further discussion? Commissioner Cogill.
I suppose a question for Commissioner Meyer is then, what is the timeline for that discussion? Is that the subsequent meeting on the 20th, or what is the plan for making that work plan and prioritizing across our various interests?
Yes, I think
Chair Meyer.
I think we could bring the work plan to the next meeting.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on Resolution 2019-102? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the legislative agenda carries. Chair Forney.
On behalf of the Planning Committee, I'd like to move Resolution 2019-106, a resolution approving the North Service Area Master Plan as amended in committee to reduce parking in Bryn Mawr Park by 20%.
Resolution 2019-106 has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on 2019-106? Is there any discussion on Commissioner Cogill?
I just want to say thank you to staff and to the community members who've been involved with this. I know most of them were here at our last meeting, but just really impressed by the work that was done and the thoughtfulness with which staff took into account a lot of really wide variety and differing community opinions to create some consensus recommendations that I think are going to make our parks on the north side really vibrant, and certainly in the few that are in my district, I think I really love the plan, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Cogill. Is there any further discussion on Resolution 2019-106? Commissioner Severson.
Sorry, I just needed to get a little clarification on that. I moved that we amend for North Commons Park 21E that would add 2 tennis courts and eliminate all skate uses at North Commons Park.
Second.
Commissioner, there's been a amendment to Resolution 2019-106, and it has been seconded. Is there any discussion on the Severson amendment? Commissioner Severson.
I just want to remind people that 55411 will not have any tennis courts at all if we remove these courts. There's been no discussion or planning with Minneapolis Public Schools on where these tennis courts could possibly end up as far as being in 55411. So I think it's important that we value equity and make sure that we have courts. It's also a reminder that 4 courts removed from Farview Park, 2 courts from Harrison Park, 2 courts from Hall Park, 2 courts from Theodore Worth Park, if I'm not mistaken. I think I'm missing one other one. So that leaves 55411 with basically 2 courts to service all of the lower end of North Minneapolis. So I'd ask for your support in this amendment.
Thank you, Commissioner Severson. Commissioner Meyer?
Thank you. So this was kind of a challenging decision. You know, we want to support both tennis and skate parks. I especially wanted to support the skate park after Henry came and spoke to us, but ultimately I'm going to defer to the commissioner for this district. He knows it best, and if there's no tennis anywhere nearby, I think we should fix that, and I hope that we can add other skate parks in other locations, and I know I'll be working hard on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Meyer, Commissioner Forney.
Yes, so my understanding is to make it 4 courts, whereas the plan presently is talking about 2 with a skate spot. Okay. I would speak against it. I understand the elimination may seem inequitable, but I'm also understanding that to eliminate the skate spot would be inequitable as well. So I would speak against it, and
Thank you, Commissioner Forney, Commissioner Cogill, and then to Meyer, or excuse me, and then to Severson.
I just have a question, maybe for staff. I'm not sure. Does this 21E run counter to the motion made by Commissioner Vitaw, the amendment made by Commissioner Vitaw at the last meeting?
Yes.
Or are they separate? I don't recall where they were at.
Commissioner Cogill, it would run counter to that, but that amendment.
Thank you, Commissioner Cogill, Commissioner Severson for the second time.
Adam, thanks for being up there. Just for clarification, we would be adding 6 skate parks to the north side if master plan, correct?
President Bourne, Commissioner Severson, yes, as proposed in the final draft before you, there are 3 3 neighborhood scale skate parks and 3 skate spots proposed on the north side, including the one that's currently shown in North Commons.
So it would reduce to 5, and we would still have 5 skate parks in North Minneapolis, correct?
Commissioner Severson, that's correct.
Okay. I would encourage you folks, we will have plenty of skate parks in North Minneapolis. Let's make sure we have tennis courts in North Minneapolis as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Severson. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I would just echo my support for the amendment. It is a very challenging issue. We are under amenitied across the system in both skate parks and in tennis courts. I'm really excited with the skate park master plan that the park board just approved, and some work that we have at the legislature to secure additional funding for skate parks. There are not a lot of full-scale tennis facilities across the entire city, and the ones that we do have, too many of them are in disrepair. So I would encourage folks to support the prioritization of Commissioner Severson's amendment as well. Any further discussion on the amendment to Resolution 2019-106? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
no.
Abstentions? The amendment carries. Is there any further discussion on Resolution 2019-106 as amended? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of 2019-106 as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Chair Musich.
On behalf of the Operations and Environment Committee, I'd like to move Resolution 2019-107. It's a resolution approving an umbrella restoration and maintenance agreement and 3 site-specific agreements: Mississippi River Gorge Regional Park, Nicollet Island, and Ole Olson, between the Friends of the Mississippi River and the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board for native vegetation restoration and maintenance work along the Mississippi River.
Resolution 2019-107 has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on 2019-107? Seeing none, all those in favor of Resolution 2019-107, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the motion carries. Moving on into petitions and communications, I will start this week with Commissioner Musich.
I'll pass, thank you.
Commissioner Severson.
I'm gonna pass until next time.
Commissioner Forney.
Yes, it's been a busy time out there with challenging weather and things like that, but one of the most successful things was the Lopet. Very excited how well that ran. They had to change their route, but it still was a very successful one. I had the opportunity to, as they say, hatch luminaries, and the luminary Lopet was absolutely magical again. Lots of other things I intended to. Probably one of the biggest things that has been people have been conversing about has been the Upper Harbor Terminal, and I'm pleased that there's a lot of good community discussion regarding that. I attended Councilmember Cunningham's town hall, and I applaud him for addressing the concerns of the community on that, and look forward to the admin and finance resolution that's coming forward. What else can I tell you about? Congratulations to our Commissioner Hassan and his marriage. Very educational. What an engagement party is. My first, so thank you for including me on that. What other things can I speak to? I've indicated several times that I'm very concerned about the consensus and wanting to make sure that we get a complete count, and am very hopeful that we will be staffing somebody to be engaged with not only the county and the city, but the state as far as doing that. And however we can utilize our forces and our rec centers to make sure that it's a complete count is really, really, that's what democracy is about. So I also helped some students from Tulsa. They were here on a project to find out about community engagement, because we, according to the Trust of Public Land, are the #1 park system. So that was marvelous to be able to show off our wonderful park system. I also want to acknowledge that our commissioner, fellow commissioner Vitow, was featured in City Pages, a marvelous article about, she is the truth teller, and I really applaud her on being acknowledged. Lastly, I wanted to announce, and I'll announce it again later in the month, the Parks Foundation does a series of talks, and on March 21st at 7 p.m. at the Walker, they will be featuring the High Line with the architect Robert Hammond. So I hope people will attend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. Commissioner French.
I attended the Lopet as well. Seen Commissioner Forney out there judging some snow art. Met a couple of new friends. Also seen a lot of young folks from North Minneapolis schools out cross-country skiing, which is a pleasant surprise, and I enjoyed that. I want to talk a little bit about the Upper Harbor Terminal and the pause. Some of the things that I've heard from the community, it gives me pause. I'm really concerned about. I want to first say I do believe development in North Minneapolis is needed. necessary and it's coming. But I also want to make sure that the folks who have been living in North Minneapolis and invested in North Minneapolis for the last 20, 30, couple generations or whatever, that they're never forgot about. So when we talk about building these million-dollar structures and we're talking about building new parks and stuff, I want to make sure that the folks who live there right now have an opportunity to enjoy in some of this development. So if we got, good jobs over there, we want to make sure that the folks that are living in those communities have access to those jobs. And I don't want to go on too much further, but I think the development is something good for North Minneapolis, but I also think the input from people from North Minneapolis is needed as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner French. Commissioner Colgill?
Thank you, President Bourne. I was also at the Lopet. I guess I missed everybody, but I had a good time on Sunday giving out some awards. It seemed like there were just a few people that were just really way better than everybody else, and they kept getting awards. So I have my work cut out for me to become a really great skier, and I'm going to start by skiing this weekend. To my ice fishing extravaganza on Saturday. Everybody's invited. I'm going to be ice fishing at Bidet Makaska at around 1 o'clock. It's going to be great. I don't know how to ice fish, but I have an auger. The other thing I want to say is tomorrow night, Southwest Service Area Master Plan is continuing with a variety of community engagement opportunities. Next one is at Whittier. I invite you to join me tomorrow night for that. I'm very excited to hear community thoughts on the first round of designs for all of the Southwest Service Area neighborhood parks. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is our trees downtown. I had a great conversation with Green Minneapolis last week, and their desire to be involved in ensuring that our tree canopy downtown, which is, as I understand it, a little bit more difficult sometimes to maintain and to ensure it thrives. They want to be involved with that work as best they can and raising private funds and welcome that opportunity. And I'm very excited about the fact that we hopefully will have a little bit more capacity in coordinating those efforts and working with Assistant Superintendent Barrick to make that happen. So very fruitful conversation, and look forward to continuing that work as the spring comes around the bend, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Commissioner Colgill. Commissioner Meyer?
Thank you. I thought we had a very successful legislative breakfast. We had got a lot of valuable input from legislators and had good reception. But I did make one blunder while I was leading the discussion, and I just wanted to apologize for it. When some other legislators were leaving, I cut off Senator Champion while he was talking, and then later on, when he raised his hand, I called on someone else before him, and Senator Champion was upset about that. So I just wanted to publicly apologize for that and say, it wasn't intentional, and that we greatly value Senator Champion's contributions to our parks and to our city, and I look forward to working with him in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. Vice President Hassan?
Thank you, President Bourne. Well, I don't know where to start. Well, thank you so much. I actually want to thank Superintendent Al for coming over, to my engagement party, and Council Rice, Commissioner Forney, Commissioner Lundell, and Commissioner John Colgill, Commissioner Meyer, and President Bradbourne. It's been such a wonderful weekend with having spent time with my family and friends, and being married to the love of my life. And we had a great time. But I also want to take this moment to also congratulate some of my good friends who are here and who I actually took a big part of, and congratulate, Superintendent Mary Mill sitting over there. She never gives up about the park board. She's always there. That's what I love about that woman, And we were just talking about it earlier when she was the person. I looked around after eating the food, and she was the person that I was next to me. I didn't even notice she was there. And then now she's there sitting in the park boat, and it just tells you how much she loves about park system and how much she values. And I know Superintendent Al is in good hands. Make sure you take advantage of Mary Merrill and make sure you call her every time you get in trouble. And with that, I just want to again thank my colleagues and my family for spending the weekend with me, and looking to start a new year and with a new superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Hassan. It's 5:28. I'll try to be brief and then go right into open time. I want to echo Chair Meyer's apology to Senator Champion. I think that there was some inadvertent overlooking of somebody that is a hero in carrying a lot of our legislation at the Capitol, and we all just want to make sure that we all publicly recognize how valuable his partnership is with the Minneapolis Park Board. I extend a personal apology to Senator Champion as well. I think Commissioner Meyer had inadvertently not seen Senator Champion raise his hand. I did, and I should have, out of respect to Commissioner Meyer, I didn't address it, but I probably should have. And in reflection, when I think about that, Senator Champion would have done the same thing for me if I wasn't recognized in a meeting. And so I just want to extend my apologies to Senator Champion for that, and thank him for his work. I also wanted to Assistant Superintendent Barrick and some operations staff are meeting with some constituents and me in the next week to talk about harvesting protocols and procedures around the chain of lakes, and we'll be possibly bringing some changes forward to the Operations and Environment Committee. It's amazing that we're already thinking about harvesting. As I'm about to say my next thing, about thanking staff for all of the work that they did during the polar vortex and disregarding their own safety to make sure that our park users were all safe. So I want to give extend our gratitude to those staff, and also just to recognize all the incredible work that our operations staff have been doing in making sure that our parkways are clear and accessible after the last couple of snowfalls. And I'll extend again my gratitude to Superintendent Emeritus Merrill and to incoming Superintendent Bangora. And again, we're looking forward to the next 136 years of the Park Board. The time is 5:30, and we are moving into part of the board agenda that we call open time. This is a opportunity that we have for members of the public to bring matters to the attention of the Minneapolis Park Board on virtually any topic that they would like to see the board give attention to or address. We only have a couple of guidelines. The only two things that we don't discuss are personnel matters and pending litigation. If there's any feedback that you want to make sure that commissioners have in regards to any of those items, the best way to do that is to reach out to commissioners or the executive staff directly. All of our information is posted on our website. Open time is not to exceed 15 minutes with time allocated by the speaker. I have 3 people signed up to speak. I will be allocating 2 minutes to each speaker. If you have any additional things that you don't get during your time, you can hand them to Ms. Summers in the front row if you have any documentation that you want to give to folks. And just the other reminder for folks, the Minneapolis Park Board doesn't tolerate harassing or discriminatory comments towards anyone, so we ask for folks to keep that guideline in mind when you're making those comments. Our first speaker is Vice President Becker of the Minneapolis Board of Estimate and Taxation. Vice President Becker, if you would state your name and, if you're comfortable, your address for the public record, and you have 2 minutes to address the board.
Mr. Board, I think you already said my name, but my name is Carol Becker, in case you were wondering, and I am on the Board of Estimate and Taxation. For people who don't understand the Board of Estimate and Taxation, which is pretty much everybody, we're there in part to protect the Park Board. Really simply, if the City Council controls all the money, we will not have an independent Park Board. And what we are there to do is to have a balance where this Park Board, independently elected people, and people from the city sit down and figure out what should happen with property taxes. Property taxes are your guys' primary funding source, so you should care about this. Now, the Board of Estimate and Taxation has many staff, but today we've kind of winnowed down as we've got computers and automation, that kind of stuff. We have had one person for 38 years. His name is Jack Qualley. Jack Qualley is awesome. Jack Qualley, in case you're wondering, put together the funding deal for you guys for the neighborhood parks. Okay? So Jack, however, after 38 years is retiring. And the question now is whether or not there should be a replacement for Jack. So I am here today to ask the park board to take a formal action supporting having a staff member that reports to the Board of Estimate and Taxation. City Council has proposed that, in fact, the city take over that function. Now, whether that's legal or not, something that I'm looking into. As you found out, the park board cannot just give away its functions to the city, as you found out with the stadium lawsuit. And I think we may have that same issue here, and I'm exploring that. But meanwhile, it would be extremely helpful if the park board took an official position on this, that in fact the city should not be taking over the functions of the Board of Estimate, and that in fact the Board of Estimate should retain its own independent staff. So my ask today is for someone to, one of you, you can work it out, to take an action to put this on your agenda today, and to take a formal action supporting having that staff member. Because of course we have 3 people on the,
Thank you, Vice President Becker. Your time has
We have 3 people
expired.
from the city, we have 2 independently elected, and 1 from the park board. And if we want to have an independent park board, you guys need to make sure that happens.
Thank you, Vice President Becker. Our next speaker is Osman.
Thank you, Mr. Bourne.
Our next speaker is Osman Ali. Osman, if you would state your name and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record, and you have 2 minutes to address the board.
My name is Osman Ali, and I'm from the Somali Museum of Minnesota, which locates 1516 East Lake Street. And I'm going to share with you a few, things I cannot explain everything in mind here today, but just I'm going to tell you that I'm more than happy to be in front of you today here and tell you something about the Somali Museum of Minnesota. And thanks for letting me, share with you these words for the park board and the new superintendent. He's not new, I think. Are you new? Yes, okay. And Somali Museum of Minnesota is located in 1516 East Lake Street. And the first collection, we got it in 2009. We got the license for the museum in 2011. We have a home for the Somali Museum in 2013. Since 2013, we were in a basement. And we have over 800 items, artifacts, very valuable stuff. We have it in a small space, and we tried to store all our stuff in storage. And luckily, we had an exhibit in Minnesota History Center. It's a big exhibit. We were working on that for a year and a half. We have close to 200 plus items there. We have over 300 plus in our location, and we have the rest in storage. So we were looking in open hand to be creating a good relationship with Minneapolis Board Park, Recreation, and have a partnership with them.
Mr. Ali, if you could just wrap, your comments have expired. If you could just wrap up in 10 more seconds, that would be great.
And we are looking for a location, for a land or a building to have a home for these 800 artifacts that we have. And thank you so much if somebody can help us with that.
Thank you, Mr. Ali. My last speaker that I have is Director Carrie Jo Felder from the Minneapolis Public School Board. Director Felder, if you would come forward, state your name and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record, and you have 2 minutes to address the board.
All right. My name is Carrie Jo Felder, 4300 Russell Avenue North, Minneapolis, Minnesota, 55412. I just wanted to come and say thank you very much to everyone up there. Superintendent Bangora, welcome. And Chair Bourne, thank you very much. And also commissioners for the 4 tennis courts at North Commons. It really means a lot. I know that I am 2 years and like a month old in my position with the board, but we're getting a really great field at North High. We just did the ribbon cutting for the Franklin Pool today, and so looking at keeping our kids busy in sports is really important, and I really appreciate it, and I made some connections this morning that I think are going to be positive for other sports issues. We just, we didn't fulfill, and it's none of our fault in some of the years, making sure that our kids were busy in sports over on the north side, and so these kids have grown up. And they don't know how to play sports, and they had kids. And so if you don't know how to do it, you're not going to teach your kid that or get them involved because you don't realize, you know, how positive it is. And so I thank you for making sure that that happened, and I'll make sure that we get that cycle going. I also want to talk about the swimming pool piece and the lifeguard relationship that we have, and we're working on getting some more lifeguards for you and getting some youth trained. And so again, I'm grateful for the relationship that we have. I want to give a really big shout out to everyone who was working here during the polar vortex issues. If you don't know, I was on the phone here every day and posting the times that the parks were open so that children in North Minneapolis could go and get food or have some place to be if parents had to work. And so I appreciate all of the response that I got because it was on point and it was very fast and very specific. And I just want to say that as well. And then also for the Upper Harbor Terminal, I just want to say that I do think that we need more consideration around North Minneapolis resident input and that we should slow down a little bit on it. And if you guys could look at the difference between low-income housing and affordable housing, I believe low-income housing is completely needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Felder. Those are all of my speakers for open time. The board did pass an amendment to the agenda inviting the Somali Museum youth here for a quick welcome for Superintendent Bangora. I'm looking around and I'm looking to Vice President Hassan. Do those folks maybe need a few more minutes? While we're figuring out if those folks need a few more minutes, I'll just make note and ask for unanimous consent on an advanced correction of the minutes on consent item resolution 2019-114. There was a typo on the spelling of one of the names. The resolution should read resolution authorizing final payment to Carl Bolander and Sons, and I think the agenda has the last name spelled wrong. So if there are no objections to the minutes reflecting that correction, I think the secretary has the authorization she needs to make that correction. Our guests from the Somali, it looks like our guests from the Somali Museum are setting up. I might defer. Do they need a? Okay. Okay. While they are setting up to welcome Superintendent Bangora, I think Superintendent Bangora, do you have a little bit more of a superintendent's update for us that you might want to share right now?
All right, I think it's on good. Thank you, President Bourne. I missed my moment earlier, so I wanted to come back and circle back around this. A couple of things that are really exciting that's happening within our system. So forestry, bids for spring tree planting have been received, and forestry is finalizing arrangements with the nurseries that will supply over 9,000 trees, which is pretty impressive. Spring planting is scheduled to begin April 1st, weather permitting. There, within the recreation area, Nokomis Recreation Center Director Maggie Marcel was awarded a Breaking Barriers Award today at the annual National Girls and Women in Sports Day in Minnesota at the Minnesota History Center. I'd like to congratulate Maggie for her work. Thank you. Wonderful award. So congratulations to Maggie Marcel. Very proud. Planning Department, the Planning Division released for public review park plans to move for more than 40 neighborhood parks in the Southwest service area, and for the Minnehaha Parkway Regional Trail between Minnehaha Park and the westerly city limits. Comments on the plans can be addressed to the MPRB and any of the series of meetings or communicated online to staff. This is the first public review for concepts. Input received will shape the final plans, which will be incorporated in the master plan during 2019. And then one more thing here, on Saturday, February 2nd, over 300 people attended the annual Luxton Park Fire and Ice Festival. There were horse and carriage rides, food, and recreational bonfire, and over 50 Christmas trees. So that is the quick report. There's more, but I think I'll stop there. We do wonderful work in our system, so thank you to everybody for all the hard work you do.
Thank you, Superintendent. Looks like our guests might still be setting up. I might ask Council Rice to give a very brief Downtown Commons update, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you may have read in the paper, Judge Peterson has entered his decision in the Commons case, and essentially what he has done is ruled in favor of the plaintiffs, and he has ordered that he's enjoined the city from operating the Commons, and said that beginning May 1st, the Commons will be operated by the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. He's basically given us 90 days to figure the situation out with the city. So I'm sure we'll have future discussions on that.
Thank you, Council Rice. We will slate that for action and discussion at a board meeting very soon. It looks like our guests are ready. We have some guests from the Minnesota Somali Museum that would like to welcome Superintendent Al Bangora. If you would like to come up to the microphone, and then I think you have and introduce yourselves. I think you have a quick presentation for us.
Yep.
Welcome.
Thank you so very much. Well, first of all, let's just go ahead and congratulate Al Bangora. Let's give him a hand. We are so excited to have you as the new superintendent of the Minneapolis Public Board, actually Minneapolis Park Board. The museum is in Phillips neighborhood, which most of you know, which is a neighborhood you impacted our youth before you left the state. So let's give that a hand as well. This is to honor your first official public meeting, and looking forward to partnering with the Park Board. Thank you so much. To introduce myself, my name is, Mike is acting up a little bit. To introduce myself, my name is Mahmoud Osman Mohammed. I happen to be the program director at the Somali Museum of Minnesota, and very lucky to manage a cool group that go by the Somali Museum Dance Troupe. The Somali Museum Dance Troupe is a program of the Somali Museum of Minnesota. One of many programs. And it's made of young men and women who not only perform Somali traditional dances, but study it every Saturday from 4 to 6 at the Somali Museum of Minnesota. With that being said, these young men and women not only perform all across Minnesota, but they have traveled all across the U.S. They've been to Ohio, Texas, California, North Dakota, Washington, and the list goes on and on. Not only are we entertaining people, but we are educating them through entertainment and educating them about our Somali culture. They are the only trained professional Somali dancers, and I cannot wait for you guys to see what they got for you today. Are you guys ready?
We're ready.
All right. So with the first dance, it's called Danto. Danto is a popular Somali dance. This dance mimics the actions of a camel. What do you think a camel? What do you think out of any animal, why camel? Right? Camel is a popular animal in Somalia. We have a big number of camels. We drink its milk, very healthy. We eat its meat, very healthy. And at times becomes a transportation. So today we are doing the camel dance. Make sure you're all observing, because later on I'm gonna have you up here and dance with us, okay? That includes you, Al Bangor. All right, with that being said, please help me welcome the Somali Museum Dance Troupe. Did you guys enjoy that?
Yes.
All right, you seem very excited. I think we're gonna have you come up here. So let's go. Go ahead and get him up here. Great. All right. So I'm not gonna make you look bad or anything. So I'm gonna train you a little bit. So the arms gotta be carefree and relaxed, okay? And you swing them from side to side. Once you do that, you're gonna bop the knees and my favorite part, the neck. So you have to act like a, yeah, I know, right? You have to act like a camel, okay? All right, we can, if you guys want to come out and help him as well and help us, feel free to come by and help us, all right? That includes any of you sitting here.
That's okay, you got it.
All right, ready? Play. Come on. Hey, Sufyan. Like this, from side to side. There you go. There you go. Woo! Hey, there you go. Look out. Hey. Yes. Here we go. Wow. Look out. It's almost over. Keep going. Don't get tired. Hey. Yes. Circle somewhere. Hey. Look out. And now do the jump part. Do the jumping. Here you go. Good job. Give him a hand. All right. So now we will give him a score. Out of 1 to 10. You guys say 10? 10. All right, you got it. Congratulations. One more question. Can you now join the group, please? Can you join the group now? Yes. All right. Who's in? Thank you so much. Thank you. All right.
Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. That might be. That might be a first for a superintendent's first day in the 136 years of the park board. So I believe that is all of our business in the regular meeting. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. The regular meeting is adjourned. I would move on to Chair Forney.
In the interest of the open time,
Your mic's on.
we have an open time at 6:30.
Public hearing at 6:30. Do you want to go to admin and finance?
That's what.
Okay. Go to Vice Chair Cogill for admin and finance.
The time being 5:55 p.m., I will bring to order the Administration and Finance Committee. Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Commissioner French.
Here.
Commissioner Severson.
Here.
Vice President Hassan.
Here.
Vice Chair Cogill.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'd move to approve the agenda with the following amendment to remove Resolution 2019-118 from the agenda.
All right, the agenda has been moved with the amendment to remove item 4.2. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amended agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I am opposed to that, but looks like that resolution carries. I will entertain an approval of the minutes for Wednesday, January 16th, 2019.
So moved.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the minutes carry. We have, I would entertain a motion on Resolution 2019-117.
I move Resolution 2019-117, resolution approving amendment number 1 to the exclusive rights agreement with the City of Minneapolis and the development team led by United Properties for collaborative efforts related to creating a coordinated plan for the Upper Harbor Terminal.
All right, Resolution 2019-117 has been moved. Is there any discussion or questions on this resolution? Commissioner French.
I know there was some conversation had at City Council was that yesterday, and I want to know some of the decisions. I want to know if some of the decisions that were made at City Council affect some of the decisions that we have to make as a park board, and will it affect this resolution right here? I guess that's the information I would be seeking. I don't know who would provide that information.
Okay, yes, I will welcome Ms. Lammers to give us a rundown of this resolution and how it is connected to the city's work.
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. Commissioner French, because there was no action taken by the City Council, if I understand that correctly, then, there's not an immediate impact to what they're doing. Certainly, any decisions that the City Council will make as far as the concept, whether they pass it, whether they change it, depending on when they make decisions and everything, will impact our project, but not immediately because basically they tabled it or postponed it.
And I suppose the reason this was set up for today is we were going to act to or vote on or not vote on. So will it? I'm wondering if we could have a discussion of whether we should delay our vote as well. Just asking, and I just want that to be up for an option.
Thank you, Commissioner French. Commissioner Forney. Or Commissioner Severson. My apologies.
Thank you, Chair Cogill. So there's a few things I want to speak about with this, but I have a question to ask, and I'm not sure if this would be a Brian question or not, but can we lose the $15 million in bonding that we received if we continue, or if this project's delayed, or if we're not moving in the direction that we should be moving in order to complete the project on time?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Severson, the bond allocation was made last year, and the standard is 4 years that local units of government have to complete or begin, put the contract or put the project under contract to obligate the amount of money.
Thank you. So I just, this evening, I just want to put my strong support behind the Upper Harbor Terminal project. People have valid concerns and strong valid concerns, and they're legitimate. But one of my biggest issues as a 36-year North Sider and has no plans to leave, we miss out on a lot of development opportunities and things to improve North Minneapolis. One thing that I want to speak about was mass transit. There was a lot of concern about the train coming down Penn Avenue, about down Lindale Avenue, or down Broadway, or down Washington. And now my biggest frustration is I look at the fact that the only mass transit we have in North Minneapolis is busing. And I look back, and if I knew now what I knew back then, or you guys know where I was going with that, I would have been fighting harder for mass transit, specifically train in North Minneapolis, and trying to figure out a way to partner with the community that I live in. I have the utmost care, and I truly believe in Mayor Fry, Council Bender, and most importantly, Council Member Philippe Cunningham. I want to try to calm people's nerves and concerns with this, because I believe that Council Member Cunningham will make sure that he is going to make sure that we're taken care of, and that we won't get, in the term of what I've heard from many Northsiders, screwed over like we always get screwed over. I truly believe that we have a great opportunity in front of us to have great development, and I don't want to lose that opportunity. Just remember, Northsiders, we have to leave North Minneapolis to spend our dollars. There's no way for us to figure out how to spend dollars in our own community because we don't have much. We don't have a hotel. We don't have a hostel. We have very few restaurants. You know, it's time. If we really want to start building our community, we need to spend dollars in our own community. I'm willing to sit down with anyone who has concerns and try to help bring them along. I would also encourage anyone to read AFCAC's recommendation. I actually agree with everything in there. It's actually kind of right on point. And I think that it's a way to move forward. I also believe in President Bourne and holding people accountable, particularly on this board, when it comes to moving forward and having a great space for North Minneapolis residents to recreate. I've also heard the rumor that we want that whole 48-acre space to be a park. And that is an absolute great idea, but I need to see the money from the city, the county, or the state. Probably, I don't know, $5 million a year maybe to maintain that space. I'm not sure. I'm not a planner in that area, but I just don't see how that's possible, and yet I still don't see how that's development, specifically housing and retail for North Minneapolis. Last but not least, what I really want people to understand is this is for North Minneapolis, but this is a citywide project. This is a place that can attract people from all over the state to spend their dollars in North Minneapolis. If anyone can tell me where else in North Minneapolis people from all over the state or the country are coming to spend their dollars, I'd be interested to hear about it. Now, I like I said, I want to make sure that I care for everybody. I understand. I want to make sure that Northsiders have a great place to live, and I think this will help improve the living, and it's particularly for recreation in North Minneapolis.
Thank you, Commissioner Severson. I think it might be good at this point, before our discussion moves more broadly, to clarify just the issue before us as the amendment, and so invite Assistant Superintendent Schroeder to talk about this.
Chair Cogill and committee members, I want to make certain that we understand that there may be plenty of discussion that can and should be happening about the Upper Harbor Terminal Development proposal, But the action that's actually before you tonight is a technical amendment to the exclusive rights agreement that will make certain that as we move through this process, the park board focuses its efforts on issues related to the park and the parkway. And essentially, as we've discussed it with city staff and amongst some others, that we're staying in our proper lane and that we allow the city to move through its process and reviewing development proposals according to its processes. And that's the particulars of, in kind of a nutshell, of what we're trying to get to tonight.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Schroeder. Commissioner Forney, I believe.
Thank you, Chair Colgill. I'm not on this committee, but I was on the original AFCAC Above the Falls, and I want to acknowledge Georgiana Yantos, who was also on the original. And just for clarity, one of the reasons why we did get into this particular agreement with the city is because the two parties could not come to a meeting of the minds as far as what the boundary of what was going to be parkland and what was going to be developed. Through the citizen process, that has been defined. And as Assistant Superintendent Schroeder has indicated, is that for us to stay in our lane. Okay, we're not development people. That doesn't mean that we all individually can not advocate for what we still think we would like to see and everything like that. But, you know, our purview is about parkland. I'm very pleased with wow, the amount of land that we are going to be getting. It's just, you know, monumental to me to think that we are going to have green space running along the river for all. So I just really, you know, want people to make sure that they understand, you know, what the nature of this agreement is, and that we can really, you know, hunker down and work at what we are good at, which is parkland. As far as the citizen process with the development, that is the city's purview, and I'm really, as I indicated earlier, really pleased with what council member has put the brakes on and said, hey, let's, you know, look at this thing, you know, more clearly. So I'm very much in favor of this agreement, and that we can now move forward and make this happen.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. Commissioner Bourne is not. All right. With that, seeing no more discussion, all those in favor of Resolution 2019-117, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Are there any nays? Seeing none, the resolution carries. And with that, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
Chair Colga?
Yes, Commissioner Forney.
Just a point of order, I just would like to know why the resolution was taken off of, Resolution 2019-118 was taken off of the agenda.
I will have to defer to the person who made the motion to amend the agenda, which is Commissioner Severson.
Yeah, sure. I just think we have somebody appointed to the board of estimate and taxation, and I believe that communication should be going through that specific person. That's why we are all appointed to a board to ultimately make decisions on behalf of the park board.
Thank you, Commissioner Severson, and Vice President Hassan rightly noted that he did move to adjourn, and so that motion, I believe, is on the floor. And all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We are adjourned.
So being there's nothing else on the agenda, I will call the Planning Committee to order. Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Commissioner Severson?
Here.
Commissioner Meyer? Vice Chair Cogill? Here. Chair Forney?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I will have a motion to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved.
I'll move resolution 2019-116. A resolution approving the community engagement policy.
Okay. Being that we have a time-certain public hearing at 6:30, if Carrie can speak for 20 minutes. I don't know, that's not going to be possible, but I think that we should move forward with at least the presentation of the community engagement policy. Carrie? Thank you.
Hello. We are before you. I'm Radius, and I'm the manager of the Community Outreach Department. And Carrie is here, senior planner for the Planning Department. And we are co-leading the update on the community engagement policy. I just kind of want to share that this is the public hearing, and hopefully we've got some great people to provide some feedback on what they are seeing with the plan. We started with the project update, community engagement plan. There was a document review. There were some internal and external interviews. We did have a survey that went out, and the survey was presented to those individuals that served on previous CACs. We got a lot of great feedback from them. We made some updates to the draft. And then we presented that to our policy team for a work group review. We also shared our work with the executive team and received some great feedback from them as well. And then we proceeded to public comment period, and there was a draft online of the policy as well as an exhibit in a couple of our recreation centers. And we provided an open house, again, just trying to find many ways for the community to give us some feedback on what they thought about the plan. Okay. Now we have the public comment overview process. So we had a 45-day public comment period, and so the input was some online survey. We had printed comment cards with a traveling exhibit, as I mentioned, that was inside of our recreation centers. Again, the 2 open houses. We received a lot of great feedback from some of our thought leaders that are doing some great work in the area of community engagement and outreach. We spoke with a lot of our individual department and divisions. We held some focus groups so that we could get some feedback from them. I want to say that we met with most of you that are here tonight. We met with a lot of our commissioners to get some feedback from them. We did that as well as our policy review team. Once we received the feedback from our community members as well as staff, we processed that information, tabulated that, did a lot of data analysis. Staff read each and every commenter's response. Various comments were separated and put into a spreadsheet, which we're going to provide you with on tonight. Comments were grouped into themes. The themes were assigned categories based on impact and master plan. So this is just kind of a picture of what that looked like. There was a commenter response. There were several comments that were generated. There were some themes that were identified, and then if the comment fell under that particular theme, we floated it to that direction. If it did not, we identified a new theme and provided the comment that was associated with that particular theme. And this was repeated for each and every comment that we received, just to make sure that you knew that we were taking a look at all of the feedback that we received from everybody that provided us with a comment. There's a lot of impact and response that we did receive. We identified 4 impact levels. We had a low impact level, and that basically it was where the draft plan can be modified with some minor changes. Another impact level is moderate impact, and there is some significant changes to the policy since the draft was released for public comment. And again, you do have or will receive a copy of the spreadsheet that just does identify the various impact levels. The next one was a high impact area, and there would fundamentally change the policy. And then the last one was if there's no impact at all, supports the policy, refers to detailed implementation consideration, or is outside of the policy scope. So those were the various impact levels. We do foresee some updates to the community engagement policy. We know that there's one that appeared in the area of equity, and the policy now includes a broader definition of equity to foster greater inclusion across a range of demographic characteristics. Racial equity lens was incorporated as we processed and examined the community engagement plan. We did utilize the racial equity toolkit for that. When we met with our Director of Communications and Marketing, we really spent a lot of time examining our language inclusion, and so the policy calls for utilization of ethnic media outlets and improved language access around meeting and public information accommodations. We also spent a lot of time taking a look at measurement and some metrics, and the community engagement methods are reported on community engagement plans at the end of the project, if not in other project documentation. There's an annual board review of the community engagement efforts, an effort to collect demographic information from the participants.
Good evening. So we're going to talk a little more deeply about the community engagement assessment process and then the CAC charge and slate. Those are some of the, I think, more significant kind of procedural shifts that have happened since the last time that you saw the policy draft a month or so ago. So with the community engagement assessment process, the policy update includes a staff cross-departmental group annual review process of community engagement of the assessments, and it also includes an accountability kind of step with the board and making sure that we're submitting the community engagement assessments as a P&C to make it both accessible to the public and to the board as an important kind of check and balance in the process. We also refined the CAC sort of composition process, and the policy now includes board approval of the CAC charge and slate based on the CAC composition goals outlined in the community engagement plan. So here's a quick breakdown of the community engagement assessment and plan. So when we have a project, program, or initiative that should should involve community engagement, the first step is to fill out a community engagement assessment form. It's a one-page procedural document that we'll be refining as a next step. Once the policy is approved, we basically refine the procedural tools that we as staff will use to see out the policy. And we've got a draft here tonight that we'll show you just as an example of what that might look like. And then there's 2 directions that the assessment may go. One is that if it's a project that is more about operational safety or technical decisions, it would likely fall in the informed category, meaning there will not be a community engagement plan developed, but there will be a filing of this community engagement assessment as a P&C, as a step of kind of holding staff accountable, making sure that we're being transparent about our decisions, and that'll be submitted again to you, the board, and accessible to the public through the board process. We'll also we've developed this concept of a staff portal where staff will also submit their engagement assessments and community engagement plans to a portal so that we'd like to structure an interagency, kind of cross-departmental team that actually does an annual review of the community engagement that's happening at the park board to get a sense of who we're hearing from, to kind of see how much has fallen in the informed category, what kind of collaborations we're doing, where are we falling on this spectrum of engagement, and we'll report to the board, so on an annual basis. We've built in that extra level of measurement. So then backing up now to the engagement assessment, the other direction is that if it's consult, involve, or partner, and I'll show the spectrum in a moment to give you a little bit better sense of what those words mean. We'll ask that staff fill out a community engagement plan, which is similar to what we do now, and we'll submit that draft as a draft to the board as a PNC with the CAC charge and composition goals. So the composition goals are a new kind of procedural method that I think we're pretty excited about, and what it does is that in the CE plan, it's asking us to explicitly state how are we going to make sure that we're keeping a diversity of perspectives, a diversity of age, a diversity of race and ethnicity, of language, of abilities represented on our CAC, on our community advisory committees. So we'll have basically a space where staff will be asked to outline their composition goals, and all appointers, including the staff and community committee, as well as the commissioners, will be asked to work toward those goals, and really we're working in many ways to try to get more explicit about making sure that we're hearing from a diversity of voices at all steps of our community engagement process. I just want to note too, though, that community advisory committees are really just one aspect of our community engagement processes. We may appoint 4 community advisory committees in the next year, but we're doing engagement every day in our parks and all week long, every night of the week. There's just a ton going on that is not necessarily in the CAC structure. So I also want to lift that up, that the CAC formation is a significant backbone of our community engagement process, but definitely not like the one and only thing that we do for engagement, most definitely. So now back to our community engagement plan. Again, that would be submitted to the park board portal. And then commissioner appointments would take place first. So each of you would be appointing a CAC member. If you choose not to appoint, you are welcome to basically pass your appointment on to the selection committee. Once you've all appointed, the selection committee comprised of staff and community members, which will basically that roster will also be outlined in the community engagement plan. We will appoint the other just under half of the community advisory committee and bring that slate before you to approve, in addition to the final charge. I'll open it up for questions in a moment. Here's an example of what we're thinking would be I think, probably the most significant piece of the community engagement assessment. So you'll recognize, if you've looked at our past community engagement plans, we've used a similar spectrum, kind of a retrofit of the IAP to International Federation Public Participation Spectrum. And it's a great tool for kind of asking questions of a process to understand how deeply we should be engaging with community in that process. And so we've developed these questions to determine level of engagement, 3 rows down, that we will ask staff to basically respond to in this assessment. And this will be filed again as a PNC to make explicit what the decision-making process is around that specific level of engagement. So this is a great example of what we consider to be a procedural tool, again, that'll kind of get fleshed out as a next step. And this is the last kind of final, I think, piece of the puzzle. Just to bring a little more clarity to the difference between how we've done CAC appointments in the past and how we'll be hopefully doing them moving forward. And again, I've mentioned, I think, a lot of this, but just to underline kind of why the changes. And submitting as a PNC allows for transparency and also kind of board accountability. It's making it more public in engagement levels with the board and public, and that's submitting both our engagement assessments and our community engagement plans. Composition goals make the goals around the CAC diversity and equity more explicit for all appointers, so we're excited again about that improvement. The final slate approval ensures the committee appointments are visible and transparent. This process will also create more focus on the CAC appointment and outreach recruitment process, and appointing through a committee improves the ability to appoint a diverse CAC. So in the past, we've all sort of appointed individually and not being able to see who everyone else is appointing. And so we feel that this process is a really great step toward being able to get a little more visibility into who else is being appointed so that we can ensure that we're getting all different voices to the table. And with that, there are a number of other sort of updates that we've made as a result of the staff review, but these are the most significant that came out of the public comment period, specifically the comments submitted by the public. So we're happy to answer any other questions, and thank you for your time. And I don't know if we're not quite at the public hearing portion of the evening.
You got darn close, though.
We did, thank you.
So Commissioner Meyer, I think you were the first to put your light on.
Thank you. So I liked the provision requiring an introductory training on racial equity for CACs. That's new, right?
Correct, yes.
We do a little something now, just kind of doing the onboarding of the CAC members. And I know Adam comes in, we have a formal presentation. This is going to be a little bit more upscale in terms of Racial Equity 101, the organization-wide training that we're providing for staff in the organization, trying to make sure that our CAC members also get that same information. So we all are on one accord regarding our language skills and the key terminology that we're using in the organization.
I think it's also a good example of where we already have a practice established, and this is really codifying that practice by putting it into the policy. So.
Great. I think that's a great addition. It also says in here that all CAC members must apply, and I was wondering if that's something new as well, if they have to apply beforehand.
It is new, yes. We have an application process already in place, and so we would just like for everyone to use it, if it's for a board-appointed community advisory committee, or if it's for one of the CAC for a master plan or capital improvement plan. So it is new.
Again, it's a process that we've been using, but this is like solidifying it in our policy for the first time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember telling Commissioner Vitoff for the last CAC that we had that she could appoint literally anyone. She didn't have to just select from the applicants. And I mentioned that to her because it was a concern having racial diversity on the CAC. So that I'm just trying to think through what the implications of that might be. I mean, I think it's certainly appropriate for like the selection committee appointed ones, but I'm unsure if it makes sense for the board appointed ones.
We did something similar for the East of the River Park Master Plan, where in some cases board members or others would appoint a CAC or bring a candidate forward, nominate a candidate, and then staff would just follow up with them and ask them to fill out a one-page document saying, hey, why would you like to be part of this CAC? Tell us a little bit about yourself, just so that we get to know sort of what's bringing people to the table and who they are, especially related to the composition goals. It's going to be an important step for us to know about people and who they are and why they're coming to the table. So it is I see what you're saying, but definitely I think almost thinking of it as a nomination, and then we'll follow up with an application, and here it is, and that person can still be appointed just as sort of swiftly as before.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think my concern is just if there's a deadline and then a board member decides that they want to appoint someone who didn't apply by that deadline, they should still be able to. And the policy as written doesn't exclude that, but I would just like to clarify that.
Okay. And again, it just provides us with an additional opportunity to capture some demographic data on those individuals that are being appointed by our commissioners to serve and represent us on various community committees.
I also wanted to ask about the selection committee. That's new. I didn't see it included on the graphic that you had where the selection committee plays in there. And I do have a concern about having too many committees, like a committee on committees, basically. So I didn't see anything about how the selection committee is chosen, who is making those decisions. So I wanted some clarification about that, and wanted to suggest maybe just having the superintendent be designated to make those decisions, to like appoint who is going to be on that committee. But I wanted to know your thoughts on that too.
Well, currently, as the policy is written, and it is a new tool or method. What we're proposing is that the roster for that selection committee, or that selection committee, is outlined in the community engagement plan. Community engagement plans are definitely a process in themselves. We consult with community members, neighborhood organizations, with leadership, with community outreach department. This is with commissioners. The community engagement plans themselves are like living, breathing documents that are constantly iterated and kind of improved throughout a process. But the initial slate of that selection committee would be outlined in the community engagement plan. So if there was any concern about who is on that committee, there would be an opportunity for the board to raise it upon the review of the draft community engagement plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm just going to interrupt, Commissioner Meyer. It is 6:30, and as far as the public hearing, we understand that nobody has signed up. Is there anybody in the audience that did not and would like to speak? Is there anybody else out there that would like to speak? Then I'm going to close the hearing and move on with our questions.
Okay, yeah, we can have more discussion about that, but I would like to revisit that, and maybe the selection committee can be perhaps an informal thing that's just advising the superintendent, and the superintendent can have ultimate responsibility maybe for those 8 positions. The alternates are also new, as far as I know. How would the alternates be selected? At what point would they be selected? Would they only be selected if there's a position that needs to be replaced? Or would they be replaced in advance?
Yep, correct. It would go to the same appointer that appointed prior to that person stepping off the committee.
And then it says that they have to miss 3 meetings or not be responsive to staff before that comes.
And I think not be responsive
Right,
to staff,
okay, so and.
just to make sure that.
Yeah, which seems like a high threshold. How many meetings do CACs have on average? Like maybe 6?
For East of the River, we had 12.
Okay.
So, it's hard. I think an average community member may miss 3 meetings over the course of a 14-month planning process. I would say that's not unheard of. Still, a very engaged member could miss 3 meetings, and in that kind of a length of a process. Certainly, there are other scenarios, but wanting to at least create some kind of mechanism for having an alternate process felt important, but not wanting to make that threshold so rigorous that it makes it kind of lowers it makes it so hard to be a participant in a CAC. So trying to remove barriers, but also create a way to, again, respond to people that may want to step down.
And then there was one comment that I liked that said that we needed to do more to get kids involved because they're the most important stakeholders. And I wonder if you had, I know that's difficult, but how can we do a better job reaching out to people under 18 who are using the parks the most?
Well, I think the composition goals is one place where we can, if we explicitly state that we would like a youth as part of a community advisory committee, and all appointers, the committee, and as well as the commissioners keep that in mind and really work on reaching out to youth to be part of those processes. I think That's one way that we have outlined here. But also, in our community engagement plans, one of the steps will be to note who the key stakeholders are in your given area, and then how are you going to reach out to them, and then how are you also going to engage them. And my sense is that youth, we know that youth are critical users and experts about our park system, and the intention there is to think about age diversity, race and ethnic diversity in our sort of who we're reaching out to. So that's where that would live also.
All right. Well, thank you. That's all the questions I had, and I just want to say you did a great job, and I think this fixes several problems, helps us standardize the CAC process, avoid the problem that we had with the last one by having the staff recommended slate come after the board appointed ones, so that we can accommodate for any diversity that's lacking in the initial nominations. And thank you for your work.
Commissioner, thank you. Chair, thank you.
I believe Commissioner Cogill.
Thank you, Chair Forney. Thank you both so much for the work that you've done on this. I think it's fantastic. I love everything that's been incorporated, given our past discussions. I feel very confident and supportive of this plan. I just offer a couple of thoughts as just thoughts. One is the length of the policy. It is long. I realize we have to have a lot in there, but in terms of it being a public-facing document, is there any way, I saw you had that graphic, that we could have something that essentially explains what we're trying to get at in a page or two? I know that's very difficult to do, but it is a challenge that I think is worth exploring. The second thought, which is actually more of a question, if anybody could answer it for me, that would be great. What is the difference between a stakeholder and the public? Is there any difference?
Let's see. A stakeholder, I think, could be a TAC or a CAC. For example, we have multiple stakeholders weighing in and stakeholder groups weighing in, and they may not all necessarily be the general public. So it may be by saying the public, we are leaving out an organizational stakeholder or a key community partner or an agency partner. I think that thinking of it as like stakeholder groups.
Groups that are represented by an individual that represents the group.
Correct.
As a stakeholder.
I think.
Okay.
We do have we could read the definition of stakeholder.
Stakeholder, any segment of a community that is impacted by or has direct interest in a decision. This may include elected officials, residents, community groups, or organizations, underrepresented communities, communities of color, neighborhood organizations, developers, business owners, and or users and potential users of parks.
I see. So the definition that Carrie gave, I think, is clearer to me than that one. That seems like the public. That sounds like the public to me. And I ask it only because I am afraid of creating any dichotomy between the value of the public's viewpoint or feedback on a project and the value of a stakeholder or stakeholder group's feedback or et cetera on the project. And anyhow, that's the only other thought I had, but I really appreciate all the work that's been done. I think this is fantastic and look forward to seeing it implemented.
Thank you.
President Bourne.
Thank you, Chair Forney. I'll echo this is a ton of work, and it's I think it's a really good start on a process that oftentimes hasn't been clearly defined. And I know you did a lot of back-end work with commissioners, making sure that their input was reflected. I see that a lot of my input was largely reflected, and I'm appreciative of that. I'll share a couple of thoughts. I think some were echoed by or were already stated by Commissioner Meyer, so I guess I'm the one that's echoing them. But my network is down, so I don't have the plan in front of me, so this is from memory, so excuse me if I'll have to get the exact points back. But there's a point when it talks about the staff recommendations, and I think we had at different times set the precedent, and I think the expectation, and I think it's reflected in the document saying that the board will actually, that would be wonderful, that the board actually makes the final appointments of what are staff recommendations. So this is just a language cleanup because it says on one of the pages, and I'll find it if you need help with it, that staff appoint, and then that appointment is approved by the board, and just the language doesn't agree there, that staff would recommend. I like the suggested outline of a 17-member community advisory committee. That said, I've sat on this board for a long time when community groups that have become involved in a process a little bit after the starting line have come and said, we really want to be involved in this, and the board has looked and said this is a stakeholder group that maybe fell into our blind spots, even though our blind spots are getting smaller and smaller. So I would recommend that we use language that says that our standard recommended CAC composition is 17 members this way, and then that composition comes forward to the board for approval, and then this board as a conduit to the community then has that opportunity to say, well, I think that this group is an important stakeholder, or this group is an important stakeholder. So there's that front end opportunity to have those questions, and then those still may, just kind of the way that it works is that those still may come up later on, and we still may have conversations as we've done in the past about adding other groups. I had the same concerns or thoughts about the application. I think we should clean that language up. I think we're all agreeing on the intent that if a commissioner is making an appointment, we should just clean that language up if that's the intent. And I also just want to be thoughtful again on timeline pieces, that applications can be intimidating and barriers for folks too. So if on that application, if there's a front end of even just an email of interest, and just say, hey, if you're interested in participating in this, versus answering a dozen questions and then maybe not getting selected, that might increase your pool of folks that are at least interested. That's all like the nuanced things that I have from memory. I'll have some more thoughts and bring those forward, but kind of around the value set, and also reading some of the other comments too. I think to really put our values in writing around kind of how our community engagement meeting times and processes can be exclusionary to people, and the reason why people say is like, oh, I don't have time to come to these meetings, or I don't have childcare, there's no dinner provided. We are one of the largest childcare providers in the state. It is in our wheelhouse. We can and should be providing childcare at all of our meetings, and partnering with Rec Plus to do that, and just eliminating one of those barriers. If our meetings are over a traditional meal hour, we could probably pay for a modest meal or snack for everybody that comes to that meeting for oftentimes what we spend for 1 hour of a facilitator or a consultant. So I think that would be a nominal expense to just remove some barriers to participation. And I would also like us to consider a stipend. And again, that could be an incredibly modest stipend, but if it's something that is budgeted in, that here's $20 for coming tonight, so you can take the bus or a Lyft or an Uber back, or a ride share back to wherever you need to go. I think we again bring in folks that are everybody in the room, aside from the people whose input we value the most, is compensated. And I think if we're asking people, when I show up to those, I'm compensated, our consultants are compensated, our staff is compensated. So at least some sort of stipend, but those are budgeted in. And again, I think all those expenses are extremely modest, but it would be nice to actually see that written in our policies someplace. So those are my overall comments. But again, I think everybody did fantastic work, and I'll take a look at my notes on the rest of the policy when I when I get a chance and before the next meeting. But thank you.
Thank you, President Warren.
First of all, thank you both. The fact that two different divisions of the Park Board are working on this, I think, has made it as robust as it is. So, yes, awesome. Woohoo! Yeah, I've served on over a dozen CACs. First of all, I hate the word CAC, but anyway, and chaired several of those. And it has just been so fun to watch how our community engagement has evolved through time. And I don't believe that this policy is where it's going to stop. I really do believe that you will be continuing to look for more, new and creative options. I mean, we do already offer food at our meetings, things like that. And usually it's food that's culturally appropriate. And anyway, I just applaud you for, as I call it, the evolution and everything. As far as the thing that most impacts this board, I really appreciate the transparency of the CAC appointments. Nobody knew, and often that's one of the things is we found out we had these gaps, of representation. So I think this is a huge, huge plus, the way that we're doing it. And so a couple questions. First of all, I haven't seen a CAC application in a long time. On that, presently or for going future, what type of demographics are you pulling from that? I mean, identifiers to help us understand that we are getting a diverse representation.
We're happy to share that with you. Radius and I have actually developed a template of demographic questions. It's 5, I think, questions that are using kind of the latest industry best practices, and we co-developed them, so we're happy to share them with you.
That would be appreciated. Yeah, right. I mean, being that now, we as commissioners, we didn't have our appointees fill out, a CAP application. So to me, I would love to see it, to know what I'm going to be having them fill out. So wonderful. So I just wanted to re-clarify that what we've got in the document is that we will be utilizing consensus. And as far as defining what consensus is, that's something that will happen at the first meeting of the CAC, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yep, that's a great question.
Good. Yeah, I think that's important for people to understand, what does that truly mean? And then my understanding is what's being suggested is to have each one of the commissioners appoint somebody, and the president only has one appointment, and that doesn't necessarily, how should I say this? The district commissioners, do they necessarily need to be taking from their own district somebody?
I think it would depend on the project. So for our regional parks, and Adam, I welcome your thoughts on this, how it might work for the regional. Do you have any thoughts on the commissioner dynamics? Having just appointed a CAC with a regional park, he has a direct experience with that.
Sure. Chair Forney, the policy is written to have one appointment from each of the commissioners for every CAC in addition to the slate, is actually responding to some of the things that we've heard from the board around regional park CACs in particular in the past. Mainly it's the suggestion that because the regional parks are really a regional or certainly citywide resource, that perhaps everyone should appoint. And so we're actually reflecting that, and it would be up to each commissioner individually to decide whether they want to appoint from within their district or not. It's completely up to you. If a regional park is not in your district and yet you still feel you want to appoint someone from your district, because that park does serve the city as a whole, you're certainly welcome to do so. In fact, our goal in the policy also for regional park CACs is to ensure that about half of that CAC comes from outside of the immediate neighborhood area of that park, again to ensure that we are hearing the voices from across the city when it comes to our regional park system, which is meant to serve that entire city.
So then I guess I'll ask a question. Carrie, you indicated that we will be having fewer and fewer CACs going forward. Tell me what that scenario looks like. Regional, we will be needing to do that per the Met Council every X amount of years. What other, I mean, we're doing the service area plans, which we hope will last 20 years. Does that, seem appropriate? So what other CACs would we be anticipating?
Commissioner Forney, I think it's probably correct that we're seeing that there will be likely fewer park master plan CACs because we're getting close to having the entire system master planned. There will be still a couple in the coming year or so. I think the comprehensive plan is the most notable CAC coming up. We also will be doing master plans for Cedar Lake and Lake of the Isles, which will certainly have a CAC. As we update regional park master plans, those will have CACs. But it is possible that there may be CACs associated with other maybe non-planning related projects if they fit the criteria set forward in the community engagement plan. So I think there will be fewer CACs than there have been in the past 3 or 4 years as we've been in a flurry of planning, but they still will be there and it will remain an important tool.
Thank you. I just think it's realistic for us to understand, what is this going to be impacting? And it sounds like it will be impacting largely regional, which should have broader representation. Thank you. And then in here you indicated an approved appointer. Who's the approved appointer?
So the commissioners would be appointers as well as staff in the committee. And I know there was one that was capitalized, and that may be something that was more of a typo.
It sounded like there was some other arbiter, somebody out there that, will make a final.
It makes it feel like it's a definition, which we should define, but it's really any of the appointers, so you and the staff and committee.
Better definition,
committee.
Thank you.
So,
Good. And then also, as far as the approval of the final CAC, it will be coming to the Board of Commissioners for final, so we'll all know what it is and everything. And my understanding is that would be, according to our board rules, would be by majority decision of who is on or off or whatever, changed up. So thank you for all that clarity. Once again, this is a huge, huge effort, and I look forward to it coming to the full board. So unless there's any further questions, I'll ask for a motion. We have the motion, okay. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. So then we have adjournment. I'll take a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We are adjourned. Before 7. Woo-hoo.
6:50, Al.
I really